Good evening and welcome to this week's 2020 Vision, your weekly news magazine programme with Vodcasts. I'm Jenny Fisher, editor of East London News, and my guest today is the highly esteemed councillor Abdal Ullah, who is a Labour councillor and represents the ward of St Katharine's and Wapping on Tower Hamlets Council. And today we're just going to be talking about what it's like for people who are public representatives, what it's like for them to represent their communities during the course of the lockdown. We're all getting a bit frazzled with the lockdown now. We're all getting very confused with the latest government instructions about what we are and are not now allowed to do. And we're all getting increasingly confused by the clarifications the government sends out on a daily basis. So what are the communities really feeling? What's the council up to? What are the councillors up to? How can we all work together? And if you have a question for Councillor Ullah, or if you want to air your views, if something has come to light which you feel may be a concern to the community and you want to air it, then phone into the studio, join in our discussion, call 020 8 12345 07. So now, thank you for your patience, Abdal. I trust I may call you Abdal.
Absolutely, Jenny. It's good to see you. Thanks for having your...
So Abdal, before we kick off, just tell us about yourself. You know, how long have you actually been a councillor, and why? Why did you decide that was the role for you?
Oh my God. Jenny, obviously you've known me for a long time. So I think this is my 20th year in public life. Now, that's not all been in council, I have to say. I started in 2000 as a London Police Authority member. I did that for 6 years. Thoroughly enjoyed what was post-Macpherson life in a new institution, i.e. the GLA was set up. Ken was then the Mayor of London. I was very lucky and fortunate and very privileged to be selected from a number of people to be on the new London Police Authority, responsible for holding London Police to account. So I did that for 4 years. And then subsequently, I did another term, but I cut short my term because I thought life of a councillor in Tower Hamlet was equally, if not more, exciting. So I gave up my role as a London-wide police authority member to become a councillor in Tower Hamlet. You know, this is my home. This is the area that I grew up with. Has given me so much in terms of what I am doing and what I wanted to do. So I thought I want to give back to the community. You know. In 2006 May, I was duly elected as a Labour councillor in St Dunstan and Stepney Green, the old ward. Notorious for 3 reasons. One was the big Ocean Estate, the regeneration. Your old friend and foe, Tony Blair, came to deliver all that money for New Deal. Obviously had a lot of issues around inequalities, disproportion around, unemployment, drug problem. Hence, the New Deal was introduced in the area. But at the same time, was so much fond memories of, my childhood as a student in Stepney. So I was very familiar with the area. But also was the birthplace of the first ever elected respect councillor. And also, obviously, there are a couple of mischievous scenarios I won't go into, but there were councillors who are struck off from the council for, doing wrong. So it would have been a hotbed. And somebody very, very who knows me said, "Why have you from St Katharine's in Wapping, a kid who grew up in Wapping, have come to St Dunstan to be a councillor?" I said, "Well, I guess I'm here to clean it up." So it was a great. 2006 was the first time, but it was an interesting time because obviously there was a bit of I suppose the best way to describe it was a turmoil, because certain senior figures, very well, councillors were dropping like flies because the election was unpredictable.
Yes. I mean, those were very strange times, weren't they? And you're right to think of that time, I think, as a time of political ferment. Living on the Isle of Dogs, I feel after that moment in 1994 where we all came together in dispute, of getting rid of the BNP.
Sorry to interrupt. That's where I first met you, because I was then chair of 1993. I was chair of student union, Hamlets College, and we took on Derek Beacon.
Yeah,
And that's where I met you, Julian Manwari, Brian, bless his soul, Brian Kidd,
and
and also
Martin Young.
yeah, of course, yeah. Martin's still around and doing really good. So yeah, so that's
Well, 2 weeks ago, I think it was May the 5th.
Yeah,
was, of course, the 26th anniversary of that glorious victory. And Martin came on the programme as a guest and we talked about it. So when you're feeling really nostalgic, then get your cocoa and sit down to that evening.
People ask me, and obviously in the council now, we've got a lot of new young faces, and it's great to see a lot of new young activists in the area. But I mean, Jenny, like you and me, I'm also very young still, right? But I started literally, as you said, 1992, 93, when I became a student at Hamlets College. First year as a social secretary, then becoming chair of student union, representing the area, and then helping to set up with some good friends the youth parliament in Tower Hamlet as a voice for the young people. And so, it started.
I was saying a bit of this to Martin, sort of sometimes you talk with younger politicians in the borough and they don't realise what you bring to the table by way of experience and past successes. But I must say that looking at the new crowd now and seeing them try things out, that's a very positive experience. But I hope that they can learn something from what we did. I mean, you made a quick reference to the political turmoil in St Dunstan's, which of course there was turmoil there. And I think the important thing is not just to denigrate that turmoil. Oh, silly people, you were in respect, you were an independent, or this, that, or the other. The important thing is to sit and think and listen and think, well, why did people feel that they had to support an independent candidate? Why were people so against some of the things the Labour government did, even though it should have been their government, that they were driven to take positions that you and I may not have agreed with at the time? We have to be inclusive somehow.
People, certain times, and this is not to sort of, it's Ramadan, so I'm being extra nice because I put politics aside for a second, and in Ramadan I'm extremely more careful and considerate around, for 20 years in politics, you don't take things lightly, because there are always, and even in Ramadan, I've seen people using Ramadan and, this sort of spiritual month to sort of further their image in the community. But, some of us who've been around for, like I said, 20 odd years, people did what they did in order to get a voice. I mean, for some people, it was the right thing to do. Post-Iraq war, there was disfranchised with Blair government. There were people who were unhappy. I mean, it's no secret that my first ever awareness of elections in Tower Hamlets was 1985. I was a wee lad, just arrived a couple of years early from Bangladesh. But I was, because of where I lived in Brick Lane, and my late father, and his friends and others, I was aware of politics. Funny enough, I've got to share this before I forget, Jenny. Al-Tabali, right? Yeah. We remembered and we celebrated the strongness of the community on the 4th of May, Al-Tabali Day.
Yeah.
I can report today the work on a proposal that I put to the council for a new 5-story building, 17 fully owned council flats in Wapping. Hopefully, not hopefully, I know for sure, will be named Al-Tabali House.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reason I make the correlation is that, when I arrived in Brick Lane, Al-Tabali's death was still very fresh in people's mind.
Yes.
My late father came from the same kind of the village area in Bangladesh, although they didn't really associate it with each other, but they knew of each other because, that extended sort of kinship.
Yes.
So that death was still, prominent. National Front logos were still around Chicks End and the far end of Brick Lane. So, being the eldest child, being the, I suppose, the only child in that sort of household with a lot of uncles and people coming in and out, I was exposed to, kind of the struggle, as they say, the issue.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think people again might find it amazing that there are still people alive who remember this, but I don't know if shortly after, would have been about 4 or 5 years after Ali was murdered, another person died in the Brick Lane area, and her name was Afia Begum. I don't know if you remember that case.
Yeah.
She had come to England to get married, and I think she had married, but then there was a fire in her flat, and her husband was killed, and the government then tried to deport her because seeing as she was no longer able to live with her husband because he had died, her circumstances had changed, and the government decided that she should be deported, sent home, if you like, as a sort of these sound like cruel words, but as a failure because her marriage had failed, obviously not through her own fault. And the root cause of the fire was a petrol heater, a paraffin heater.
Yep,
because the council flat had no electricity. That was the conditions in which Bangladeshi people were expected to live without complaining, in a council flat without electricity.
I mean, obviously, at that time, Spitalfield, Phil Maxwell, and a number of others. Derek, who used to be a youth worker.
Derek Gadd. Are you
talking? Derek Gadd and John Newbegin, right, and others at the Woodseer Project. So, I mean, it's astonishing when you talk to the sort of young British Bangladeshis. Like, what, really? The only way Bangladeshis in the late 70s and early 80s could get into the council housing ladder was to find a way of squatting.
Yeah.
Chicks and House. I still remember for a few months. My late father had to find a way, or somebody helped us to get a property. Lucky. When I say lucky, my father was lucky because then the council turned around and said, "Oh, this property has been empty because it was for the." Do you remember the City Challenge project?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. City Challenge project was going to make this into a consultation stroke hub room. So Mr. Ullah, we will find you somewhere else to live. And so the council offered us an option for Bow or Wapping. And, dare I say, my late father's wisdom, thank God, he chose Wapping. And I've been here ever since. And this is my home for the last 30-something years. So, yeah, that generation of us who grew up seeing the likes of Alauddin, Jalal, Murtuza, Abbas, some of the good Saeed, Mizan, those guys, along with, you, Julian, Brian, Julia, fighting really for a better Tower Hamlet, irrespective of whether you lived in the Isle of Dogs and all the problems with BNP, or you lived in Teviot and all the racism in Teviot, or you lived in the Holland Estate and the poor conditions of the housing in the Holland Estate in those times.
Yeah. Abdal, can I ask you just to move backwards a little bit because we can't see the top of your head. Oh, yes, but you're getting all excited. I do that. But,
I'm new to this.
We're going off into history here, rather, and it's not supposed to be a history program. It's supposed to be a news program, but
it's setting a contents of where myself and the community that I feel so strongly passionate about, the Tower Hamlets community, that we've come a long way, but in every sort of generation, there seems to be a few, not few, who are left behind. And, if you take the public role, it's your duty to make sure that you don't leave people behind. And I think what the coronavirus has shown, and if I can bring it home, is that there is a wealth of disproportionate amount of people who are left behind. There are those who are suffering because of austerity in the last 10 years. And then it's like double whammy, lockdown, no jobs, no sense of security on top of the poor conditions that they were living in, or, the poor sense of health they had. So I think, it is the generation now, those who are actively in public life, or those who are doing civil duties. I mean, it's great, the goodness in people has come out. This I was going to say Ramadan, but this lockdown, because if you see an amount of people volunteering, so I can only say I mean, you know her and we know her. I'm very fond of her sister, Christine. I've known her for all these years that I've been in Hamlets College. You know, when we were at college, there's always some sort of incident, and she'll be there to help the Wilcox estate residents and so forth. Um, I remember when I was on the police authority, there was some big issues on the Wilcox estate. Police there every night, you know, and she was there till 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, talking to the police, talking to the families, and somewhat say supporting and defending the young people who are, you know, wrongly accused. So I remember, I hope she doesn't mind me doing this. So a friend of mine very generously donated some food and rang me up and said, you know what, from my restaurant, I can give you, well, a large quantity of pizza. And I thought, the only person I could think of on a Saturday afternoon, sorry, on a Friday afternoon last week, was Sister Christine. So I rang her, and as ever, very politely, she answers the phone, and I said, look, I've got this friend who's offering me some pizzas, and, you know, as much as I am delivering as much as I can, but that volume, I can't. She said to me, I won't do her accent because it'll be inappropriate, but, you know, in that sort of sweet way, she says, okay, if you can get your friend to deliver on the Sunday afternoon, 12:30, I can get this shipped, you know. And to behold, we sent those, you know, no photos, no nothing, just, you know, to her, and she delivered. And her volunteers. So that's the goodness that's come out from the community.
Yeah. Yes, I think we've got two levels of goodness. We've got people who perhaps haven't been involved before, but are finding they want to do something and are coming out. And I know on my own estate and immediate area, there are people coming out helping with food deliveries who've not been pillars of the community before. And then there's, as you say, the people who are figures in the community or figures on the council who have come to their position over a number of years and are using it now to make those links and work together. And it's good that we're working together. But I just wanted to try to differentiate the community a bit. I mean, obviously you have regular surgeries as a counsellor, and probably under lockdown you're not having them, but I bet people are still phoning you and contacting you and emailing you. And I'm just wondering, what are the older people feeling? And despite your kind comments, I count myself among them now. What are the older people feeling? What are their fears? And how should we and the council meet those fears? Do you think your fellow councillors are finding ways? Do you share with your other councillors what we're all doing in the community to help the older people? And after you've talked about the older people, I'd like you also to talk about the younger people. I think they're in quite a different boat, the younger people. But let's talk about the older people first. I mean, how do you think councillors are helping out?
I mean, it's all very well. I mean, you know, this is my first ever podcast, can I say, Jenny? So that's a first. I've got to learn Zoom from my 6-year-old, how to do that, which is great. People can't see, but I've got tablets, phones, and laptops, whatever. I've got an office thing. It's all new, so, and we're getting used to it. I mean, I can pick up the phone to a certain senior officers and say, can you do this, do that for, you know, for my residents, rather than doing the whole members inquiry and waiting 10 days for a response, because people call a counsellor at late hours or they see you in the street. Yes, they might want to say hello to you, which is nice, but they've got a reason to talk to you. So and I have to credit a lot of my counsellor colleagues, not naming everyone, but a lot of them have been really stepping up, you know, from when I say all parties, you know, a couple of Tories in the Isle of Dogs. I mean, when I say couple, that particularly Andrew's been very proactive in the first wave of the lockdown. He was marshalling up and down at Asda car park and helping people. I saw that. I mean, obviously, a lot of it is on social media. You see some people doing good photos on social media. But I think a lot of my Labour colleagues have been doing fantastic. You know, the initiative to sort of deliver food. It's like a double reward. You know, you're doing your bit for the community of all communities, but then on Ramadan, you exceptionally, you know, are going out there. So the idea of putting food parcels together to help people to break fast, but then also to kind of extend that food to non-Muslim friends and residents and neighbours so that they can also have a nice warm food, which has been good. And so I'm quite fortunate is that I live literally overlooking a block of about 24 flats of elderly people. And they're all my neighbors. You know, they know me, they know my kids, and I can wave at them through the windows. and I've gone to particularly 4 or 5 of them regularly to sort of offer them, packs of biryanis and stuff, and just say hello, how are you? Do you need anything? I go to the local supermarket, and I've said to one of them through the windows, "Can I get you something?" No. So that's just on a personal level, on a very micro level. But as an organization, the council, I have to say, in difficult circumstance, be it the financial worries that we've as a council have endured in the last 10 years, from the austerity measures, the cuts in our budgets, adult social care has been a priority. And in the difficult circumstance, they've still, from what I've read, and I get obviously bulletins and stuff, that they've been doing their best. So the small hubs they set up in Poplar, in St Hilda's, in Darul been meeting some of the needs. So it's been a joint effort. I'm not saying the council is doing everything. It's been jointly organized from the council, but with partnership with community groups like Poplar, Sister Christine,
Yeah.
and others.
I think somehow the crisis has brought out the best in the traditional Tower Hamlets in many ways, that people who, some of the council workforce, have really used their old connections and their skills gained from being part of a community and are working together. And I know there have been some criticisms of the council, because I think some people have said, well, the council's delivering food packs. Who are they going to? But they haven't. There's a sheltered list recommended by GPs and approved by the government, and the food packs are going there. So some people are saying, oh, it's a funny business, our council's getting food to their friends. I can't see any evidence of that. Can you?
No, I think, look, I mean, in all fairness, there are people who will, in the most difficult times, will criticize. And I've seen people going around distributing things, taking photos, not councillors, but others who are trying to build a profile. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm saying there are those, you've got to have the good of intention. What I will say, as you know, and LB24 has been very supportive of my publication, Away from My Council. I've got a lot of successful British Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, who've rang me up and said, what can I do? My business is shut. I've got all this product and all this, produce and everything. Let me cook something. So, on the first week of lockdown, I won't give too much publicity, but a very successful entrepreneur rang me up and said, Abdal, you've got good links with the Barts Hospital. I said, yes, I served on that board. What is it? He said, look, I can provide 500 hot cook meal. So the very first week, when there was that story about nurses crying because they couldn't queue up to get food, or, which was true. So this very generous businessman came and delivered 350 hot cooked and very good, I have to say. It was a very high-end food, which I managed to ring one of my contacts at Royal London, and they received it, and it was fantastic. But because Barts in London now is amalgamated into a massive institution, he said, well, I live very close to Newham, because something happens to me, that's my local hospital. So can I also do that? So we then sent another 100 or so to Newham. And then I did, shamelessly, not me, because I wasn't there delivering it. I acknowledged his work on social media to encourage my other friends. And then they were coming out, not woodworks, what's the word? They were literally, coming over and say, look, I can prepare this amount of food. I can do. I mean, today I will be leaving about 10 to 6 to go. Funny enough, I've got doctors who receive the food, Muslim doctors in Royal London, and obviously some non-Muslim, are now volunteering their money to pay for food to feed the community. That's astonishing, right? So the community was providing food for doctors, nurses, and porters and ambulance drivers at Royal London. Now I've got doctors at Royal London, highly skilled consultants, who are pulling together and buying iftar, a meal for Muslims and non-Muslims in the community. So I did one last week. I'm doing one today, where they're coming together and paying for food so that we, as community activists, can then share it with the community.
I think, again, then that's another good example of how people in the public services, people working for the public sector, know the reality on the front line and are using their skills or their money or both to do something about it. And that's very positive. I know that another of the criticisms made though of the council, and this may be something you're not particularly involved with, but it'd be nice if you would perhaps agree to find out more about it, is I know a lot of the council workforce are very sad that the council intends to sack them in early July and to employ them on new terms and conditions. I mean, do you think you might sort of, in the new situation we're in, where we're valuing public sector workers a great deal more, could you sort of find out a little bit more from the unions and from the council about what it is that's going on and see if we can find a way through this? It's wrong, surely, for a Labour council to
I
sack the
think
workforce.
we obviously, and you're very right to say, I'm in my current role, I'm not in the executive, so I involved. But from what I've had, because obviously I'm a union member myself, I have spoken to a number of colleagues, a number of staff. There is an issue around terms and conditions and so forth. That's been hammered out. Obviously, this is frozen now because obviously the pandemic situation. And this is about work conditions and pay and so. But I do take your view, and I'm sure the mayor and his team and the unions and the council chief executive will no doubt, once this is hopefully soon rather than later is lifted, we'll go back around the table to discuss. So I'm fully aware of that, and I hear you loud and clear.
Lovely, thank you, Abdal. I did say we might talk a little bit about young people as well, and I know that a lot of your work, partly because of the police authority connection, but other connections too, has been with younger people. And again, I was saying to a guest a couple of weeks ago, I was very surprised in my own flat. I came out of the lift the other day. Normally when you come out of the lift, there are people waiting to come into the lift to go upstairs. But I came out of the lift and there were four young men, I don't know, around about the age of 20 maybe. They were old teenagers or young 20s. And they just crowded round the lift. And there was space for me to get through, but they didn't stand back. And I just turned around to them after I'd walked through and I said, given the circumstances, you could stand back when a little old woman comes out the lift, you know. And they just said to me, use the stairs. And I thought, I've never heard talk back like that from young people before. And talking to some other young people on the island, people thought, well, maybe the young people are not really appreciating the seriousness of the pandemic. What are you finding in your southwest part of the borough?
Well, I mean, one of the very first things I did is both. I mean, I'm very lucky. I have a dual role. I'm a councillor where I live, but I'm also involved running a couple of small organizations. I'm involved with the Bangladesh Communities Organization and the local mosque. So the very first thing we did was we suspended the evening classes in the mosque for safety reasons. Then we suspended all activities in the community center, from luncheon clubs and other things. Obviously, the youth center was shut. It's no secret, but my little area in Wapping attracts a lot of young people at night time.
Oh, yes.
They like to come here because it's quiet. Not many of their extended family friend members live by the riverfront, and they get up to what young people sometimes do. So I had a really nice picture sent to me by a neighbor, concerned neighbor, of a group of young men smoking what they smoke and the laughing gas they inhale with gloves on. I know, we've got to have a little bit of laugh, right? So he said to me, councillor, dare I say it, these boys, right, and some girls, they're doing what they normally do, but this time they're doing it with gloves on.
Yeah.
This is hilarious. It's tragic, but it's hilarious. So what I did is I proactively got involved with the former two young mayor of the borough and the current young mayor of the borough. So guys, can you do me a quick video? Because as much as I am young, Jenny, if I say to the young people, don't do this, they might not think I was so cool and hip, and I'm not involved with all those wonderful Instagram and everything else. So I got this, but I am, I would say, cool enough to know the young mayor, and he knows me too. So I rang him. I said, look, do me a favor. Could you do a quick 20-second video to say, look, guys, we got to stay apart, stay away, not come together, because we are then transmitting the disease to our elders, our family. We know in Tower Hamlets, in some homes, there are 3 generations cohabit, living together. So they did that. Then, believe it or not, through my other hats, one of the most influential British Bangladeshi Instagram comedian, I know him. I got in touch with him because he does a video, and it's like 50 to 70, in fact, hundreds of thousands of people watch it, like daily. The message. So he put a message out saying, please don't do it. There's a funny way of don't go out, don't do what you're doing. So that was quite useful. So I want to start by saying most young people that I know, being young and being involved passionately in community, are a testament of goodness in our borough. But just like in every community, in every age, in every color and creed, there's always the bad who make it bad. So what your experience is a very, I would say, very deep negative one, because in this current situation. But I'm sure in another time, some of these young men will come running if you had a bag in your hand and say, Jenny, do you need a help or whatever? But I think by large, a lot of the young people have taken the view that we need to protect our elders, we need to protect ourselves. So they've been quite good. I'm quite proud.
I mean, there's another argument that says the younger people, the younger generation, are the ones going to be paying for the costs of this pandemic. So they're going to, in some senses, be the worse off. And you're right, of course. I've had all sorts of bags carried by strangers, who expect nothing in return. So you're totally right on that. And I've even had the odd knock at my door over the last few weeks, and somebody that I don't know is there, and they hand me a small package and say, it's a chicken biryani, it's from, and they mention who it's from. So there's a lot of positive, but I was upset to see something negative happen as well.
And as I said, there are those who will still continue to do what they do, smoke what they want to smoke. But so we just got to, take the best of what's been given by young people.
But again, I think looking to the future, you as a councillor, again, to be cheeky and ask you to take something else up with your contacts. As we begin to get out of the lockdown, I think the council needs to give some real attention to our youth services. I understand the financial incentive to bring more youth services together in centralised places, but it doesn't always work. And a lot of the outreach has gone, and a lot of the service has gone. So would you sort of scrutinise the council's work in the youth area after the lockdown is being eased, and see if it's really fit for purpose and if it can be improved at all? Because it needs attention, Abdal.
No, thank you. And as I said, I'm somebody who has had a long history in both in youth service, youth work, and still delivering youth activities through my foundation that I do with a lot of the young people. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure my colleagues who are in the scrutiny, or my former colleague, when I say former, I was the chair, but not anymore. But those who are involved in the scrutiny will continue to keep an eye on that. Yeah, I mean, but just to say on the Birani, Ramadan has always been very great for big, lavish iftar gatherings, and obviously this year there's been none. So our little mosque in Wapping, we normally have a multicultural. When I say multicultural, it's a community iftar gathering. Both the priests and councillors of all backgrounds and other community friends all come along to break fast together. But obviously this year we didn't do one, but we decided to instead order food in packs and biranis and vegetarians. That was very popular in Wapping. And then some of the young people in my area went and said, oh, this is from the mosque, just to say, Ramadan Mubarak and stuff. And it was very well received. To the point, I want to share this wonderful news that one lovely group of resident have rang me up and said, Councillor, we were so touched by the Muslim neighbors, what they did to us in Ramadan, that on Eid, we would like to give out some presents to the community. So on Eid day, I'm going to be Eid Santa, and going around giving some wonderful dessert that they've ordered specially from a very high-end hotel. So there you go. I mean,
that's the most brilliant cross-cultural invention, isn't it? If Tower Hamlets can be the birthplace of Eve Santa, that would
well,
be.
there you go. So I've been tasked with the duty of delivering. So, and then, going back to the criticism, or some people who find it quite easy from the comfort of their Twitter to criticize councillors. Well, this particular person's got in touch with me, A, because I'm a Muslim, B, because I'm the elected official in the area, and thirdly, because I have the kind of, say, the knowledge, to send the dessert packs to the right people. And hopefully I will be able to deliver it to some very good families who will be appreciative of the, on Eid day.
Well, I know you're going to have to nip off in a couple of minutes to go and do a food delivery. And I've got a couple of things to say about other matters after you've gone. But there's a couple of things we've got to touch on very briefly before you do go. One of those is, we've just mentioned it, is Eid. And in the past, I know there's been a big, Eid in the park celebration. What's the position on that this year, Abdal?
Well, I've done a small post today. It's with a heavy heart. For 10 years we've been organising the Eid in the Park. We started off in Stepney Green Park, then it became massive. It's at Mile End Stadium, and thanks to LB24, Shah and the gang broadcast it regularly. We get thousands of people attending, and the British weather, it's lovely. In fact, weekend's going to be quite lovely as well. We would have attracted thousands. We, like all mosques in Tower Hamlet and in the country and across the UK, are closed for worshipping, a congregational worship. And we are also not going to be, sadly, hosting the Eid in the Park. And my plea to the Muslim viewers and people who listen to your podcast and others and who know of Muslim families, obviously continue to wish them Eid Mubarak, send them virtual hugs and virtual Eid greetings. But for Muslims, please continue to, like what you've done in Ramadan, pray at home, celebrate the breaking of fast, celebrate the wonderful lavish food and stuff that you're able to bring safely home. Prepare it as a family, guys especially. No excuse. Stay home, wash up the dishes, do your bit. So yeah, it's Eid at home. Eid, stay at home. That's the message, loud and clear, from Muslim doctors, Muslim lawyers, all the professionals out there. We're all saying to all our friends, as much as we love to see each other on Eid, as much as I would like to invite my non-Muslim neighbors to come in for a samosa this year, stay where you are. What little I've got at home, I'll see if I can share. But so stay home, please.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that, Abdal. And just again, a couple of seconds, we do know you as the person who founded and now runs the British Bangladeshi Power List. I can't remember, I'm afraid, what time of year that usually happens, but obviously there's a phase of opening nominations, closing nominations, then the ceremony, what's the news for 2020? What's going to happen in 2020?
Well, Jenny, once again, 2020 was going to be the big one.
Oh, yeah.
10th anniversary of BB Power, 50th anniversary of the independence of the birth of a nation called Bangladesh. It was going to be we were going to be doing this amazing event where we would recognize 50 iconic British Bangladeshis since 1971 and 50 of the most inspirational figures in the community now. So it's a massive work. But due to the pandemic, due to uncertainty, we've scaled back so much. To the point we were going to do road shows. I went to Scotland early in the year, last year, and I had planned to go to Manchester, Birmingham, Wales. It's like a road show to go and say, guys, we're going to be doing this. Who are your most inspirational figures in the last 50 years from the British Bangladesh community? So we've really had to scale down. We had a planned big celebration of some of the leading university students coming together for an end-of-year party. It's a gathering in June, July after their exams. We had to postpone that. So it's, hopefully we'll still do something to recognize virtually the iconic figures. And maybe because of the pandemic, we will see emerging of more inspirational figures from the British Bangladeshi community. I mean, if we take like the Muslim community in Britain have shown so much courage at the forefront of the pandemic. From the first number of doctors and nurses and medical people to sadly pass away were Muslims. We will still do some work to recognize, but unfortunately, we've scaled down from the big showcase, razzmatazz celebration. Dare I say it, I was talking to the Foreign Office, the Foreign Secretary, and people like that of how do we celebrate as a Commonwealth the contribution of a tiny country called Bangladesh, but the people's big heart and the big contribution that they've made. But I hope we might do something in Tower Hamlet, to recognize the contribution of the British Bangladeshi in Tower Hamlet's life over the last 50 years.
Yes, and that would be so good, wouldn't it? I think Tower Hamlets is quite often seen as, the cradle of Bangladeshi culture in this country, although so many other towns and areas contribute to that.
But if the builders get their work done, next year, the 50th anniversary, we will have the Altabali house ready to say.
We won't all fit in that, but it would be, yes. I think sometimes one can feel, oh, look, there's Bangladeshi people going on about the high-ups. Are they just being assimilated into UK culture? And countering that argument, of course, is, well, you've got to have role models, haven't you, for the younger people?
The notion of not assimilating is integrating. So we retain the best of our culture, and then we adopt the best of what Britain has given us as my father's generation as immigrant. We are now very, very proud British Bangladeshis. So we will celebrate the best of British, as both of British and Bangladeshi.
Brilliant. Okay, that's a wonderful positive note to end on, Abdal. So it's been a joy talking to you, and thank you very much for giving your time this evening. And I hope that one day you'll come back, and we can maybe get a couple of other guests on, and do talk to your fellow councillors and tell them what a gentle ride you get on this programme and what an excellent platform it is for.
And can I take this opportunity, Jenny, all your viewers and listeners on LB24 to say thank you for this opportunity, but also a very what's left of Ramadan, make the most of it, and a very safe and a family-friendly stay-home Eid Mubarak.
Thank you, Abdal. Right, we'll let you go. And what we're also, I'm just going to stay on for a couple of minutes now. I hope I'm still on, because some very strange thing has happened to my telephone. I think somebody's trying to ring me, and they're not supposed to be able to do that because it is on Do Not Disturb. But let me just carry on. Yes, I think I'm back now. Let me just carry on, and just a couple of headlines for you, and then just something to draw your attention to, and that is just quickly to run through the local headlines. In Tower Hamlets, this is the East London headlines. In Tower Hamlets, there is no news. There has been no news since the 11th of May, which we reported last week. So the news in Tower Hamlets is there's no news. But something was announced a couple of weeks ago. And so just to tell everybody, it's a bit late, but there's still time. Monday is the deadline for applications for schools, community organisations that want to run a summer holiday scheme. So if you are interested in that and you haven't applied yet, get on the Tower Hamlets website, but put your application in. It's quite a rigid process. They're suggesting you get your applications in by Friday, which probably is quite a good idea. So don't lose any time on that if you want to run a summer holiday scheme. Hackney has made a new announcement that it's now going to go to fortnightly waste collections in order to boost recycling. So that's a thought, isn't it? I don't know how that'll go down. They've decided to reduce the collection of non-recyclable waste so that they can collect more recyclable waste. So good luck with that, Hackney. But I would say that 11,000 people responded to the borough's consultation on what kind of recycling collection there should be, which is rather different from Tower Hamlets, where some councillors are trying to pass off just over 200 responses on the Tower Hamlets Homes consultation as a respectable consultation upon which they can act. So there you go. That's another example. You know who you are. 11,000 just on recycling. And Hackney's also stressing people who are using their newly reopened tennis and basketball courts keep social distancing. Newham has reminded residents that the week from the 18th to the 24th of May is Mental Health Awareness Week, and there's loads on their website about the support they're giving to people who have mental health problems or who know people who do. So get on there and read it. If you do or don't feel you have mental health issues at the moment, just read it anyway, because it's all good knowledge people should know. And Barking and Dagenham is calling for more subscriptions for its garden waste collections. So there you are. That's what's happening across our region. I get the feeling the news in East London is really quite slow. Everybody's thinking mostly about waste and just recycling rubbish, and then sort of hanging on in there, trying to see where we go with this easing of the lockdown. It's really not easy at all. And in response to that, I must say that one shout out for Tower Hamlets Council for at least having the decency to work with local schools, not against them, on the issue of whether they should reopen. That's primary schools at least, on whether primary schools should reopen. The schools in Tower Hamlets are all taking reopening at their own pace, maintaining safety, seeing what they need to do in their buildings with their children. Teachers, support staff are still working in schools. The schools may be closed, but support staff are still working very hard. The teachers are still teaching, just in a different way. So please don't think it's just been an extended holiday. And thank you to the borough for working so well with head teachers to make sure that we put the children first, because that's the important thing. Okay, so that's the news. And then just finally, I wanted to draw your attention to the Vodcasts Facebook page and the Vodcasts video channel, where there's a number of collected vodcasts and videos. And one of the series that's just started is we're following the story of Nicola Quinn, who many of you will know. She's quite well known in our local community and probably going to become more so. Nicola has had the misfortune of being diagnosed with cancer in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic. So she's telling us some of the real life stories about what it's like going through treatment for cancer when you've got to bear coronavirus considerations in mind as well. And there's been a lot of very positive feedback on her stories and the information she's putting across. So that second video in the series is up there now. If you haven't watched it yet, I would encourage you to go there and watch it either on the Facebook channel, or you may prefer to do it on the Vodcasts YouTube channel, and check out the first one as well. So I mentioned that particularly because Nicola was hoping to come onto the programme this evening for 5 or 10 minutes just to say hello and to explain why she's documenting her story, hoping that it will help others. But at the last minute, she's just didn't feel that well and was not able to come on. So you go check out the videos and let's make Nicola feel appreciated for what she's going through and how she's sharing it. Right, okay, that's it for this evening. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember, Vodcast is a programme you can ring into. It is a programme you can appear on. If you'd like to be on the show as a guest or just partially to say a few things about a cause in your area or your organisation that you're promoting, please just contact us, message us on Facebook, or otherwise get in touch. Look at our website for contact details. I'm not sure we've actually got any on there, but look at it anyway. So thank you again for listening, and we're going to sign off now, and we'll see you again next Tuesday at 5 o'clock.